McDonald's presents Burger Reviews by Hamburglar. Today's review, the classic Big Mac, Hamburglar. Rubble, rubble. He said, there's more sauce in every bite. Ba-da-ba-ba-ba.
Rubble. Available at most restaurants in this area.
Welcome to this special edition of Orioles on the Verge. This is Zach Spedden, joined as always by Bob Phelan and Nick Stevens. And we are coming to you right after the announcement that the Orioles have acquired Corbin Burnes from the Milwaukee Brewers in exchange for DL Hall, Joey Ortiz, and the 34th overall pick in this year's draft. With this move, the Orioles land their ace as Burnes, who finished 8th in National League Cy Young Award voting last year, has been one of the best pitchers in baseball over the last several years, and he won the Cy Young Award in 2021. There's a lot to get into with this move, which we're going to discuss tonight. One thing to note, the Orioles are acquiring Burnes in his final year before he hits free agency, but they clearly get the guy who's going to pitch at the top of their rotation this year and get themselves a bona fide ace that makes them a lot stronger going into 2024. So, Bob, I'll start with you, and we'll kind of break down each component of this deal throughout this episode. But just your reaction to the Orioles getting their ace, and their ace being Corbin Burnes.
Well, it's going to be hard to put in words. I mean, we did wait like an hour or two before we went live here to kind of breathe a little bit, get ourselves together, make sure there weren't any extra details that come out. But obviously, extremely excited, extremely happy. Mixed emotions because we're huge fans of DL Hall. We're huge fans of Joey Ortiz. Obviously, lose a comp pick for this organization is not like easy to let go either. We know that as far as Elias Company, but just to get a bona fide ace, someone who's won the Cy Young, opening day starter. I was just telling you guys before we hopped on here, Burnes, Bradish, Rodriguez, for some reason sounds a little bit better than Bradish, Rodriguez, Means. No offense to John Means, it just does. This pushes down everyone a slot. God, he's got great playoff experience. I think he's got an ERA around the mid twos in his career in the playoffs. So, yeah, I think this is amazing. What a couple days in Birdland, get a new owner and then immediately trade for an ace. And it's like we were saying, Dylan Cease seems inevitable, but knowing Mike Elias, it's just going to probably be something that comes out of nowhere. And while obviously Burnes was on the radar as far as a trade candidate, it seemed like they were going to hold on to him, at least going into the season. And, well, here we go. Mr. Rubenstein said, go ahead and pull the trigger, Mike, and let's see if he signs an extension. I was kind of hoping that would be the next news that trickled out, but there's still time for that. Very excited. Very, very excited.
I still don't even know what to say. I don't even know what to do. I really don't. Like, it's literally like I don't know what to do with my hands. How are we supposed to act when something like this happens? Like, we're trying to sit here and process this and make sure everything's good to go before we hop on, and I'm stunned, to be honest. Yeah, is this real? Great name, Nick. I don't think it is real. And we just recorded. I don't even think I've changed my clothes since we recorded last night. I'm trying to put all these thoughts together here. Like, you make this deal. Go back to yesterday when we were recording, and I said, I'm hesitant, right? This new ownership, I'm hesitant. It's not going to change this fall season. What the fuck was I thinking about? Like, we're going to just put the explicit tag on this because Mike Elias is a goddamn wizard. This is unbelievable that you traded one prospect. And we can talk about these guys they traded. We can go into detail more, but you traded one prospect and a draft pick, F them picks. LA Rams style, F them picks. Who cares? One prospect for Corbin freaking Burnes. Like, I have no other words. I really don't know what else to say. As an immediate reaction, that's my immediate reaction. Holy crap, this is amazing.
For the record, we're 100 episodes into this show, and this will be the first time we have to put the explicit label on one of our episodes. So
it's worth it.
Remember, it was Corbin Burnes.
Real quick, Nick, what did you tell me Jim Bowden's predicted trade package would have to be for the Orioles to get Corbin Burnes coming into the offseason?
Yeah. Shout out to, I've seen this on Twitter. Somebody tweeted at us, and I got to find it again. Back in November, Jim Bowden said, I'm quoting here, a package consisting of Kobe Mayo, DL Hall, Chase McDermott, and outfielder Dylan Beavers would probably come close to landing Corbin Burnes. Okay, Jim.
Yeah. Mike Elias doesn't miss when he trades these types of things. And I guess he can buy as well as he can sell, because goodness gracious, we still have plenty of bullets left if we need someone at the trade deadline.
With Burnes, I'm surprised, not because I didn't think Burnes was a target, but because the Brewers have not been acting like a team that was going to trade its ace this offseason. In fact, just last week, they signed Rhys Hoskins to a 2-year contract, which is not a team-altering move, but nonetheless, you add a veteran who can make your lineup a little bit better on a 2-year major league deal. So Burnes, by this point, had dropped off my radar entirely. But for the Orioles to get him for what I think is a very reasonable return for a guy who's only under contract for 1 more year, it's great, especially when you consider this. And there's been some analysis pointing to Burnes' numbers last year as maybe being pedestrian compared to what he had done in the last 2 years. But number one, he was significantly better in the second half last year. The ERA over a full run lower down the stretch compared to the first half, 3.94 ERA compared to a 2.71 ERA in the second half. Secondly, the innings total, 193 and 2/3 innings pitched after coming off a 202 and 2/3 innings pitched total the year before. The Orioles don't have a guy in their rotation right now that you can pencil in for probably 185 innings, let alone 190. So he brings value right there. Bob touched on this. He's got postseason experience. He's pitched well in the postseason. And when you look at the data, it all points to Corbin Burnes still being a very, very good pitcher. And let's face it, we know without looking at anything the Orioles look at internally that the Orioles like pitchers who have the traits that Burnes has. Some smart people in this industry have pointed out the lines between Kyle Bradish and Corbin Burnes. Those guys actually have some parallels, but Burnes' stuff is a little bit better. And that holds true. So I really do think that the Orioles got their guy in this case.
Yeah, absolutely. And, it's kind of funny. I think it's been said in the past, Dean Kramer and Kyle Bradish, like, they look up to Corbin Burnes, like they modeled their game off of Corbin Burnes. And now here he comes in as a veteran, still only 29 years old. So if the Orioles did want to extend him for 3 or 4 years or 5 years, what have you, very feasible to do so. But at least for 2024, guaranteed, Kyle Bradish and Dean Kramer are going to be able to sit in the same locker room and really just pick his brain. You got to think that's only going to make them better, especially Bradish, who's coming off such an electric year. And listening to Rates and Barrels with Eno Saris talking about he thinks there's still a little bit there that Bradish can do to like tick up even more and continue that success. And I think having Corbin Burnes around is definitely going to enable that as much as possible. And yeah, I think seems like a good clubhouse presence. I know probably a little disgruntled. Maybe that explains the rough start to 2023 after that arbitration case. I know there was some bad feelings between him and the Brewers after that. So yeah, not really concerned. Bare minimum, this guy's going to be the Kyle Gibson innings eater while also being like Kyle Bradish stuff-wise and performance-wise. So the best of both worlds there.
Yeah, who's going to replace all those innings Gibson threw last year? Corbin freaking Burnes. That's who's going to replace those innings. Plus some. Yeah, I had written off Corbin Burnes too as a potential target just because like we were so focused on Cease because that seemed like the obvious one because the White Sox, like they're not doing anything this year. They're not doing anything next year. But this Brewers team, like Zach mentioned, they just signed Rhys Hoskins, who I think could have a tremendous season, bounce back. The ACL injury, he should be ready for opening day. But you've got a good young Jackson Chourio, one of the top prospects in baseball. Garrett Mitchell, Sal Frelick, Christian Yelich rebounded well last year. Like William Contreras, they got a great catcher behind the plate, at least offensively. Like I really like this lineup. They're in a super weak division. Like that's easily for the taking, and now you trade away your ace. I don't understand it either. I'm fine with it, but now your rotation is Freddie Peralta, Wade Miley, Colin Ray, Joe Ross, and DL Hall, according to Roster Resource. Like, fine, I'm fine with this. Yeah, Burnes sitting here top of the rotation, and you talk about the effects of pitching in Baltimore is going to have. I think pulling up Baseball Savant page. You could look at his Fangraphs page and the numbers. Yeah, he probably arguably the worst season of his career. Still a 3.5 WAR pitcher. Projection systems are still looking at like a 4 WAR pitcher next year. But if you look at the Baseball Savant page, like it's not. Don't look at it like next to your wife or partner. Like this, it's not safe for work image. The Baseball Savant page and the home runs. pitching in Camden Yards, I think, was the second lowest park. 18 home runs. Yeah, estimated 18 home runs allowed at Camden Yards, which I'm losing the page here and look at the other ballparks. But it was only PNC Park. That was it. So it's going to be huge. This is I don't even have to look at the data or numbers. It's Corbin Burnes. We know he is a true ace of this staff. And you mentioned Rates and Barrels. Yeah, I binged because it's pitcher week on Rates and Barrels. So I binged all 3 starting pitching episodes this afternoon. And I'm just sitting here a couple of hours ago listening to Eno Saris say that Grayson Rodriguez is a complete pitcher. He's got the command, he's got the stuff, and he sees a future ace. Well, an ace like now in the making for Grayson Rodriguez. And then talking about Kyle Bradish, like you mentioned, as someone who's going to beat the projection system. A lot of the things that he did in the second half of last season point to an even higher ceiling for Kyle Bradish. And when Eno Saris talks, like, I'm going to listen. And how we get to add Corbin Burnes on top of those 2 guys and push 2 potential Cy Young winners themselves down the rotation. Here we go. This is going to be fun.
I think the 3 of us have been in agreement for most of this offseason that the Orioles were still competitive with the rotation that they had in place. You know, you added a 5th starter somewhere behind the mix of Bradish, Rodriguez, Kramer, and Means. And they're still competitive, but they're going to need help down the stretch. They're going to need help if they want to get through the postseason. I feel like that discussion changes with the addition of Burnes because now you've got that guy who's going to pitch for you in game 1. You've got the guy you want on the mound in the elimination game. So this, I think, changes. You know, there's that initial excitement of him being there on day 1 this year, but this should change the dynamic for the rest of the 2024 season and into the postseason.
Yeah, I think you can give us an A+ offseason now. I was happy even after yesterday's news or 2 days ago's news. Nothing would have brought me down. But yeah, I think, do they even need to look into doing anything else before opening day as far as just getting ready for the season? I think, like I was saying earlier, we have the bullets to make another move before the deadline. But what do they do now? Do they just look to kind of – it's just so many ways we could attack this. Like, how does the infield shake out now that Ortiz is gone, the bullpen now that Hall's gone? But do you look to just make a small trade like Ramon Arias or an Austin Hayes or a Jorge Mateo just to kind of make room? Maybe you trade a couple non-optionable relievers to make some flexibility in the bullpen, but you got to feel really confident about repeating as AL East division champs right now after this move.
Yeah, maybe you look at the bullpen and you bring in a little bit of extra help just in case. I don't really know who's available in free agency, but yeah, there's certainly a number of smaller moves that you could still make at this point. And if you wanted to go out and make another big move, like you traded one prospect, so you still got a full farm system that you can make a deal, or like you roll with this. And now we just talked about yesterday when we recorded about new ownership. You already talk about the hope and optimism moving forward of next offseason being able to land big free agents. Well, now this trade proves like Mike Elias isn't prospect hugging. He's not just hoarding all these guys. It's not Sig sitting back in the office saying, no, you're not trading any of these guys because we're going to win with all of our guys. Like, they were waiting for the right deal, and this was it. You can go off and make another deal at the deadline, and this gives me like hope and optimism that when this team realizes by the mid-season weaknesses are exposed, injuries happened, like this team's going to go out and make another big splashy move, I feel like. So I don't know. He's a rental, hope maybe, but we also have a new ownership for now. Like, we have a new ownership with a lot of FU money coming into the organization. Maybe an extension happens at some point. I don't know, getting ahead of ourselves a little bit there, but again, there's at least optimism that he could be a guy that gets an extension, and he's not here just for 1 year. So,
a lot of extensions happen in spring training. Let's start with Corbin, follow up with Adley. Come on, Rubenstein, what do you got for us? Just keep the good news coming. Let's keep these vibes flowing.
I think that I wanted to talk about that a little bit because this comes just basically 48 hours or so after we learned that David Rubenstein would be purchasing the team. I have to think the timing is coincidental, but we don't know that for sure, and we're probably not going to know that for a long time. The other thing that I sort of look at is I don't expect Burnes to sign an extension. That would have been true if he had gone to the Yankees. I do think he's going to test the open market, but now you at least have a fair shot at keeping him. Whereas before, we would have definitely this episode was recorded a week ago. We would have said this is a 1-year rental. You got to make the most out of it that you can in 2024. Now we can at least feel like maybe there is a shot that in 2025, Corbin Burnes is still an Oriole.
He gets a full year to work with Adley behind the plate, work with this young team, this great coaching staff. Drew French is like, man, I come into this situation and it just gets better. Maybe he falls in love, and maybe instead of having to overpay to get Corbin Burnes, we can just pay market value and keep him here. Or who knows, maybe, if it's not an extension, you get that 5-day window after the season, maybe something happens then. But regardless, even just say he's a rental. Sorry, hit my mic. If just say he's a rental, it's still a great trade, no matter what. Just because I love Joey Ortiz. I'm happy for him. He's going to get a real shot to play every day in Milwaukee. But to lose Joey Ortiz, a draft pick, we still have 2 more in the top 30 whatever picks, 38 picks or what have you, and DL Hall, who, some people consider him a prospect, Baseball America, and some people don't, but even he was like, plenty of potential, still always going to have that potential, but we were looking at him as a 7th or 8th inning reliever this year. So I don't know. It's just, it's still hard. It hasn't sunk in completely. I'm not going to lie.
Yeah. And that question that Chris has in the chat, would he be subject to draft compensation if he walks next year? So could that be a situation where you bring in Burnes for the year, you extend the qualifying offer to him, and maybe he does go test the waters and sign somewhere else, and the Orioles just get that draft pick that they traded away pretty much back? It's not going to be that exact pick. It's going to be later in the draft, but still, that's potentially awesome. No, I think to move, even if he doesn't resign though, again, you didn't trade much in terms of prospect capital to get him for that 1 year. And clearly you're pushing the chips in, saying that this is a World Series year. It's been saying for the last, since the Orioles were eliminated, it's World Series or bust now for this team. Well, clearly that's the direction they're going now. And so even if it's only just for 1 year, you didn't overpay in terms of, I think, trade value. I don't think the Brewers were fleeced in this deal like a lot of people are saying. I think it is the Brewers got very good value for Corbin Burnes. From the Orioles' perspective, I think it is also tremendous value. It is possible. It is a win-win trade for both organizations. I'm sure if you're a Brewers fan, you're pretty pissed off and what the heck? But I think it was fair on both sides. And if it's only for 1 year, then okay.
I think that's a good opportunity now to pivot towards what the Orioles are giving up in this trade. And let's focus on the players that we know are going in the deal, which are Ortiz and Hall. Obviously, who the Brewers take with that 34th pick, we're months away from knowing. I'll start with Hall because I think that that's the one where maybe some Orioles fans are like, I love this trade, but I hate to see Hall go. And it could be because they still were holding out hope that he could develop into a frontline starter. Maybe it brings back memories of trading some guys that the Orioles have dealt over the years to see them flourish elsewhere. Or maybe, as I know someone pointed out here in the comments, you've created a hole in the back end of the bullpen. So let's just kind of look at that. Really, any angle here. I'll start with you, Nick, because I know that you've been pretty vocal this offseason in saying you think DL Hall is a reliever. And it's time to turn the page and focus on that. Knowing that there is a lot of ceiling there, how do you feel about him going in this trade?
I'm fine with it, to be honest. Just because, yes, he could. I truly believe that his floor is a dominant late inning reliever. He's proven success already in that role for the Orioles at the major league level. And then last time we talked about Hall, I did mention though that all the emotional investment we have put into DL Hall over these last couple of years since he was drafted, the ups, the downs, the injuries, the not pitching, the velo disappearing, the velo coming back, all of this, we still have a lot of hope for DL Hall. And at the same time, there were a lot of positives. You look at the velo did come back, and the fact we talked about how he learned to better command the secondaries, work them in the zone more. Those secondaries were more effective. The fastball was playing better than ever. It's still an 80 grade fastball. There is still real potential for him to be a big league starter. There's no doubt about that. That's why, though, I think it's still a gamble. Like, there's still no guarantee that he's going to cut it as a starter. Like, I think there's a better chance, obviously, that he sticks out in the bullpen, but you're trading that away, a guy who's still not proven that he could be an everyday starter for you in the big leagues. You're trading that away for a bona fide ace, a guy who, the last 4 years has finished in the top 10, including winning the Cy Young Award. I'm 100% down with that. I love DL Hall. I love the attitude. I love the passion. I love all of it. I hope he is super successful, but I'm fine. It's Corbin Burnes, man. You got the ace.
Yeah, completely agree. I mean, happy for Hall, because I have to imagine he was already preparing to come into spring training stretched out and like preparing to be a starter. I think moving to Milwaukee, especially since I assumed, honestly, if the Brewers were going to trade us Corbin Burnes, Dean Kramer would be part of the package going back, just because they seem to do that thing where they're buying and selling, where Kramer could at least give them innings. But Hall, for them, I love it. I mean, he could bare minimum be a 5-and-5 guy that has amazing starts and then some frustrating starts. But coming to the Orioles, he was a guy, a lot of people were locking him into that bullpen role. Some of us were saying, like, give him a chance to start. You never know, because if it hits, he can be really good. But I just feel like his upside was a little bit curtailed here in Baltimore, because most likely he's a 7th inning guy. He's like the lefty version of the setup man with Yunier Cano potentially. And, if Kimbrel faltered and he was lighting it up, he could have been the closer eventually. But now he gets to go to Milwaukee, 6 years of working with a pretty good pitching development team they have over there, and try to become a starter, or bare minimum. They made Josh Hader, so he could follow in those footsteps as well. So happy for Hall. Sucks to give him up. Seriously was excited to watch him pitch for the Orioles this year, but at the same time, like Nick said, it's Corbin Burnes, like a bona fide ace, Cy Young winner. So you got to do it.
Yeah, I agree. If there's an environment where DL Hall can thrive, and that's a lot of them, but Milwaukee definitely is a place that can get the most out of Hall, whether that is as a starter, as a reliever, and as long as he stays healthy, I think that they're going to get real value from him in either position. And, for this year, if they are sort of in a transition mode, they can try him as a starter. Because this is not a strong division. Some things click for them. They could be in the playoffs again without Corbin Burnes. So maybe you do take that chance. I'll go now to Ortiz, though, because we've been Joey Ortiz's biggest fans for a long time. And we've been saying for a few years now, this guy is a legitimate prospect. And even very recently, we're talking about how he could fit into the 2024 Orioles. With that said, we know this organization has a ton of infield depth, and Ortiz was blocked coming into this year. So, Bob, I'll start with you. What are your thoughts on the Orioles losing Ortiz, and what kind of career do you see him having?
I hate that we lost him, because I legitimately think he can be an all-star caliber shortstop. Maybe not perennial, but I think he's got that kind of upside and that kind of quality. He hits the ball so hard, and he plays such good defense that literally all he would have to do is hit 240, 250 and be like an offensive force almost, because he doesn't walk much, but he hits the ball so hard. All he has to do is lift it a little bit more, chase a little bit less. And I think, he's hitting over 300 easy in the minor leagues the last couple of years. So I just think the bat is way better than people think, and that glove is special. We know he can play up the middle as well as anyone. And at the same time, though, we have Gunnar Henderson, Jordan Westberg, Jackson Holliday, Kobe Mayo, Connor Norby, like the list goes on. Like, the best case for him here was kind of like that utility guy that can play all around the infield. Maybe he could play center field in a pinch. I don't know if he could ever learn something like that, but I just don't know if he was ever going to be the regular shortstop here with all the infield talent that we had. I think he's the top 50 prospect in baseball, and he's behind like 4 or 5 guys. So it's pretty crazy. It was pretty tough for him here. So I'm super excited for him to be able to go to Milwaukee and play a lot in the major leagues this year. They have Bryce Terang at second base, Willie Adames at short, So he's going to get time, second base, shortstop, third base. I'm really happy for him because I know he deserves an everyday shot in the major leagues, and now he's going to get it. But yeah, it stings really bad at the same time.
Yeah, we can do our memorial for Joey Ortiz. It's well deserved. I mean, the guy entered this organization, and everyone's like, he can't hit. He can't hit the ball. He's glove. Is he going to get to the major leagues? I'm going to clip that comment there. I think that's all of Orioles Twitter's. I'm drunk right now. But you look at the growth, his physical growth this year. The guy came back from the pandemic that shut down 2020 season. He came back jacked. And we had Matt Blood on the show. He talked about how he was meticulous. Joey Ortiz was just meticulous about every single thing he put into his body this year to make sure he was at peak physical condition, and really put a ton of work into developing that bat, and it paid off. Yeah, there's, like Bob mentioned, there are some holes in the swing, some flaws he can work on, and he is getting older, but at the same time, like, he's had the injuries, he had the pandemic season. I still think he's got a tremendous major league career ahead of him. We'll see if the Brewers keep Willy Adames. I don't know Willy Adames defensively, like if he's going to be the guy you roll out at shortstop or not. Not familiar with his game. But regardless, you've got a guy who's versatile enough in Joey Ortiz who can play multiple positions for you around the infield. And I think this roster is pretty wide open for him to get plenty of playing time. This Brewers team just highlighted the pitching staff there. Maybe they've got an idea of another move they're going to make, but like, I love Freddie Peralta. I'm drafting a lot of Freddie Peralta right now, but is he your ace of a playoff team? Is Wade Miley your number two? A 37-year-old Wade Miley going to be a strong number two for you? I don't know, but this lineup looks like fantastic for the Brewers. I really do love this Brewers lineup. It's young, it's exciting, good veteran leadership there. And Joey Ortiz could be a tremendous asset to this organization. So I wish Joey all the best. Just like Del Hernandez, I'm going to be watching a ton of Oakland A's games this season. I'm going to be tuning into Brewers games as well to watch Joey and watch DL Hall. It's been fun following them. It is sad to see them go, but it's when the first major deal that we get to talk about, not like we traded Zach Showalter. Oh no, but the actual first major deal we make involves one of our guys like Joey Ortiz. It does sting a little bit, but again, it all comes back to the return was Corbin freaking Burnes, and it's a lot of fun.
Yeah, and wouldn't be surprised, like you said, if Willy Adames gets traded. I think Ken Rosenthal tweeted out that Devin Williams might now be on the table as far as looking to see what they could get for him. Yeah, that starting pitching rotation. I think DL Hall's going to make the rotation after just looking at the roster resource there. But yeah, Joey Ortiz, going to miss you, but I'm going to love wearing your DH Gate Brewers jersey while I'm watching you on MLB TV this year too. So,
yeah, I don't think that it would be a hot take to say that Ortiz may end up having a better career between him and Hall, just because it is that really high floor, really high floor player with what you're going to get out of his shortstop defense. And if the Brewers do trade Willy Adames, they've got their guy that they can, I think, give the job to next year. And, he's going to have ups and downs in the bats, but I think the defense is going to be there. So this does sting a little bit, but at the same time, it's not often you have an organization where a guy like that is not even your best long-term shortstop or even your best shortstop prospect. And that was the position that the Orioles were in. So they could afford to move on from Ortiz. So I think that in that respect, it is fair to give him up.
Yeah. And something else with this trade, yes, Corbin Burnes is a rental, but at the same time, he's one of the top pitchers in baseball. I mean, I'm seeing there's so many tweets out there. I can't keep up with them all. They're all amazing. But, the numbers of breaking him down, just picking some of the stats last year from Burnes and comparing him to the rest of baseball. I think Eno's projected him as like the number 2 pitcher in baseball this coming up season. Like, that's unbelievable. So I think what this trade also speaks to is that we haven't been overvaluing these Orioles prospects. People like Joey Ortiz. Is Joey Ortiz really that good of a prospect? He did help you net Corbin Burnes. Now, I do think though, the thing that we're kind of overlooking here, the draft pick that's involved. I think that's huge aspect to this deal that I think the Brewers are super excited to get. So yeah, Joey Ortiz, they're getting depending on which list you look at, a top 100 prospect, a back end of the top 100 prospect. You're getting Hall, who's got starter upside and not a top 100 prospect, but still a young enough arm with plenty of upside. But just like when the Orioles made that trade, the Tanner Scott trade, the kicker was getting that draft pick turned into Judge Fabian. So I think that's also a huge piece that, again, if you're the Orioles, you've got, what, 3 picks how many picks do we have in the top 100 before this deal? 3, 4? You move one of them, that's okay. But for the Brewers, that's also a huge get for them.
Yeah, that's definitely not something that should be undervalued as part of this trade. It was probably like, we'll give you this comp pick or Connor Norby, take your pick. And they took the pick. That's a guess, but I think the value is kind of along those lines. And yeah, the good thing is we can give up this draft pick, but we can potentially get another one back by offering him the qualifying offer if he declines it, if he doesn't extend. If he accepts it, he's back. Great. If he declines it, we get a pick back around a similar spot that we just traded this one. So I'm thinking that's what Elias and company were thinking along the lines of, as far as being willing to part with this one. We still have 3 picks in the top 100 now, I think, and 2 in the top 40 at least. So, things are looking up in Birdland. We just lifted off, I think.
Absolutely. And I add on to that this is where the importance of Gunnar Henderson winning Rookie of the Year comes into play again, because you still have that extra first-round pick to work with. Now, I think we've taken a full look at this view and trade, and I agree with you guys. And I want to shout out Joe Doyle, who pointed out something, which is that the Brewers getting that 34th round pick, and I'll quote him here directly, that's how good small mid-market teams succeed over the long term. That's exactly what you want to do if you're the Brewers, because the 34th pick is maybe what you get for Burnes next year if he leaves in free agency. So you get that Hall and Ortiz for 1 year of Corbin Burnes. And as we've kind of pointed out tonight, still have a decent team left without him. That helps, even if it does sting right now for Brewers fans, which I'm sure it does. But turning our attention back to the Orioles for a minute here, we'll have a lot of time over the next couple of weeks to pick apart how the rest of the roster is going to look. And, my hunch is that there could be another move before we come back on the air next week that's worth breaking down. But what's the one sort of ripple effect that the two of you are interested in, whether it's the bullpen, the infield depth without Ortiz, maybe even the pitching depth at AAA? What's sort of the burning question in your mind after this trade?
For me personally, it's like I was saying before, is first, based off of this trade, it's the bullpen, because I think Hall was supposed to be a big part of that. And he was one of the few guys that did have options. So maybe do they sign a Ryan Brazier type of guy now that Cole Irvin could be switched down a little bit to a left-handed swingman in that bullpen? Maybe like there's a small signing or trade for a guy in the bullpen that's not like a big name like a Devin Williams, but just a guy that's really valuable, really solid. Maybe something like that. And then I'm just, as far as going into spring training, like I said, I'm just curious. Yeah, trading Ortiz does clear up a little bit in the infield, where I think now you're definitely going to have at least one of Mateo and Urias on that opening day roster. Just as a bench guy, I'm assuming it's Mateo. Do they find a home for Ramon Urias and or Austin Hayes now that we're probably going to keep Kowser and Kjerstad around? So unless there's just another big pitching trade lined up, which I doubt it at this point, not right now, there's still things and ways to reshape the roster and fits in where they should.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I don't know. Like, you've got the pieces to make another deal. We're riding high, sky high right now. Let's go ahead and make another deal. There is still like Santander, Hayes, Mullins, Kowser, Kjerstad. Like, you've still got a gluttony of outfielders here that you could part with to make another deal. I don't think it maybe happens before spring, but I also said I thought yesterday's events wouldn't change anything. I definitely think it's the bullpen as well, just because I was imagining DL Hall being in this bullpen going into next year, so you do lose that piece. And now you've still got Tyler Wells, you still got Perez, Danny Colomb, Yennier Cano, Craig Kimbrell, but at the same time, like Dylan Tate, I know he's saying all the right things. The videos look great, but I'm still concerned about Dylan Tate's health. Michael Baumann, like, what is the organization? How does they view Michael Baumann? He had a decent year last year. A lot of guys without options, like someone else mentioned earlier. I don't know. I think that's probably where they turn their attention next, to really fortify this bullpen and make sure that it is as stone cold lockdown as it can be going into the season, because you've got the rotation that can now get you to the playoffs, and a playoff worthy rotation. But this bullpen, I still do think there's a lot of pieces here, but I do still think there are some question marks that do need to be addressed. Again, the Felix Bautista thing, like that was a massive, massive, massive loss. And Kimbrel himself is not going to be able to fill that void. They're going to need more pieces. So we'll see what the Orioles decide to do with that. But
yeah, shout out to my neighbor, Alex Colson, who's a Phillies fan. Not a big Kimbrel fan, as might be predicted. But, just running down what is in our bullpen right now, I have Kimbrel, Cano, Wells, Danny Coulombe, Jacob Webb, Cionel Perez, Mike Baumann, Dylan Tate, Cole Irvin. You could make an upgrade there, or you could trade like Baumann and Perez or Webb for someone with more options. But yeah, I think there's a move to be made there still.
Yeah, I agree. I think that if you see another notable move over the next 6 weeks or so, it is going to be in the bullpen. Losing DL Hall does hurt, and it hurts for a lot of the reasons that I talked about in a recent episode, and one of them being that I saw him as maybe an insurance policy in case things didn't go well with Craig Kimbrel this year. But if there's an area of the roster that I'm confident that this regime can fill with even a minor move, it's the bullpen. Danny Colombe's success last year, Yanier Cano. Then you go back to 2022, Cionel Perez, and he's pitched well enough that he's still in the mix 2 years later. They can find a guy to fill some of those innings. It might not have the ceiling of DL Hall, but they can find another reliever to eat up some of those innings and still be productive for you. So there is a hole there on the roster, but it's one that I'm confident they can fill.
Yeah, I agree. And it might even be internally. You already got Jonathan Heasley. That's an option. They just signed Andrew Suarez. There's some potential there. A minor league deal. Obviously, Keegan Gillis. They brought back Juanis and Charles. Even guys like Chase McDermott, Cade Povich, Kyle Bronovich. These are guys that could be options in a bullpen as well. So, yeah. And like Texas Orioles on Twitter says, we still have a solid bullpen. And I agree. Like, all these guys are super solid. Got Brian Baker has options. I know Orioles fans don't want to hear that, but it's plenty solid. And I agree with you, Zach, that they could make a waiver claim tomorrow or some minor league trade and find someone that could easily come in and help out big time in the middle innings. But yeah, not too worried about the bullpen, but I could see if there's a spot that could be upgraded, that could be one.
Yeah, definitely not saying it's a bad bullpen. Just when you're comparatively speaking now, it's kind of falls down the pecking order a little bit. They did just sign Andrew Suarez. Maybe that's why they knew this trade was happening. But no, you do have Baker does have the option. Vespi has the option. I know Orioles fans don't want to hear this name either, but Keegan Aiken, I said before, I think the Orioles like Keegan Aiken a lot more than probably most Orioles fans like Keegan Aiken. And in terms of like just small time usage to get you through this long season, I think those three guys can provide just a little bit of value. So there's definitely some depth options available right now. But yeah, it's just the whole deal. I mean, what a night for real. I was hesitant about everything, and now I am full go. Looking ahead to this season, this team is going to be fun. This team's going to be a whole lot of fun. And it's in terms of just like baseball in general, like I said, this is a win-win trade for both teams. And I think that's awesome. It's good for baseball. Both teams are going to get success out of this. And I'm excited to watch all three guys that were traded ended up having successful 2024 seasons.
Couldn't agree more. And yeah, man, if I wasn't already excited for spring training starting in 10, 11 days, at least I think the first camp start opening then. Even more so now. Let's go. I'm ready. Can't wait to see the quotes. We still get to analyze the next Mike Elias presser after the sale of the team. And once the sale becomes official, we get to see what Mr. Rubenstein says at his press conference. So plenty of exciting things ahead. But man, this week, what a week. enjoy it, Orioles fans.
It has been quite the week. And good news for those of you listening to this on our main feed. There's another episode dropping this week because we recorded one on Wednesday night that's still relevant because we talked about a bunch of players who were not part of this trade. We didn't talk about Corbin Burnes being the opening day starter for the Brewers. So all of that content is still good to go, and we will be releasing that episode this week. In the meantime, you can check us out on any of our social media channels, including Facebook, Instagram, Threads, X, TikTok. We're also over at Substack, oriolesontheverge.substack.com, and at Patreon, where you can sign up right now for as little as $3 a month to become part of our community, and at the $5 and $10 levels, have access to our daily countdown of top 50 prospects. We're just coming up on the top 25 now. You are not
need to make a change there.
That. Oh, that's true. We are going to have to make a change. So we're going to actually have a 51st prospect enter the list here soon. You're not going to want to miss that. For Bob Phelan and Nick Stevens, this is Zach Spedden. You've been listening to Orioles on the Verge, part of the Believe Podcast Network.